Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Thursday, October 21st, and this is virtual lunch number 417. Our guest today is George Tziahanas, a managing director with Breakwater Solutions, and this discussion is, of course, part of our series on deconstructing data risk with Breakwater. Hi, George. How are you?
Great to see you again, Ari.
So excited to see you here on the virtual lunch. Tell us about your background and your work with Breakwater.
Background's a little bit eclectic, but have really focused my career around information-intensive problems, both from a consulting perspective and a software perspective, and really started working in environments that in the legal and the compliance space where you had complex books and records requirements, or you had complex surveillance and investigation or e-discovery requirements, and being able to understand what those required, both from a process and strategy perspective, but also then from a technology perspective. And then how do you actually put all that stuff together and make it work in the real world and do it at scale? There's a lot of fragmentation that's been in that space for a long time, and being able to put together a software portfolio that focused on that and then combine that with strong advisory and expert consulting was really interesting to me. And I liked the leadership team, and so was able to work things out, and then just blessed to be here. Running and leading a software portfolio at scale is really interesting because you actually have to try to anticipate what's needed. And you have to try to anticipate things that even your clients don't think about. And so it's really being able to anticipate what's needed, understanding what the capabilities are that you could bring to solve a problem. On the converse side, working in the consulting side allows you to actually then get deep and embedded within an organization, understand how they're trying to deal with a problem or a challenge that's emerging. And so having the ability to bring both those two together is really helpful with our clients, because you have this ability to see what hopefully is necessary, but understand how you actually take it and implement it and get it to work in the real world. We have this whole security and cybersecurity focus of the world that we all live in. We have this compliance. Like, how does this stuff actually all start to fit together? And if you think about compliance, it's a set of affirmative obligations that you have to meet in order to do something. And then cybersecurity is also a form of really managing the security and the risk around that, those same set of information. For us, there's a tremendous amount of interrelationship between the two. And it's not necessarily if you have good data risk management or you've got really good cybersecurity, you've solved one or the other problems. It's a very interrelated and integrated set of practices and solutions going forward, especially if you look at the amount of money that's being invested at this point, especially on the cyber side. You've got to find a way to get leverage out of that. And if you can do that to also manage some of the data governance obligations that you have, that's great, or vice versa. So control was always thought of as the premise within governance, right? Mm-hmm. That is that if I can govern something, I have some sort of control over it. And the control that people always assumed is that really this ability to govern from centralized places, a set of data. And what I'm saying is you still have to have some control over it, but it's going to happen a lot closer where the data actually is. As you deploy solutions, or as you get programs in place and strategies in place to have a good data risk, you'll be able to manage the risk more effectively and potentially take on a little bit more risk in allowing access to certain systems that you may not have before. Because if you understand how they really work and what controls you can put in place within them, then maybe you can accept a higher level of risk with your partners or with your third-party vendors. If you haven't been following anything, there is a ton of money and has been pushed into the legal tech space, really, especially over the last 5 years. A tremendous amount of money has come into it, which is good. It's allowed a tremendous amount of innovation. It's allowed consolidation where it was needed. And that's been a good thing for the legal industry overall. It's created confusion in some instances as well. If you go into law firms or enterprises in the legal or compliance functions, they're being just inundated daily, obviously, with people promising their AI or their ML or their bots or their whatever it is going to solve all their problems. And they come in a way that are promising, like anything else that's early on, the hype rarely lives up to its full potential. So that's where it gets really important that those legal and compliance teams have to really think about and put a roadmap together and say, all right, we're going to try to solve for X, or we want to improve how we analyze our contracts, or we want to change the way that we monitor and manage our surveillance or investigation capabilities, right? But you have to think about, okay, how can I apply these new capabilities, these new technologies in a way that also doesn't turn everything upside down and itself is managing a level of risk when you do this. The M&A is going to continue at a very fast pace. You have PE firms aggressive in this space as well. The PE firms are competing for deal flow, we're fortunate to see, but all the PE firms are competing for good deals. Makes it harder for the strategics usually to play, or they can, but you're going to probably see a lot more PE deals. You're going to see strategics with some of the larger deals coming forward. So I've never worked on a deal on an acquisition of a law firm. I will say that for law firms, though, today, I know that there's a tremendous amount of cyber in particular and some compliance, like all the enterprises are doing with all of their vendors, including law firms. You're seeing the enterprises that hire the law firm vetting their security profile and their compliance profile and everything else. When a vendor, as an example, is going to get funding or bought out by a PE firm or whatever it is, a tremendous amount of due diligence goes on generally. Now, how far that goes down, for a tech company, it probably wouldn't go down to all of their clients. It would go to them. And so it would probably stop there. It would potentially go to their clients if anybody in due diligence smoked something out that felt like there was a risk in information that was being managed, as an example, by the technology or the solution provider. We're going to have to see some integration of AI, more integration into the core systems, the core content systems, where it just becomes an extension of the natural progression of these platforms as well. And those capabilities will get introduced. You won't even really know or see it immediately, but it'll start to happen. On the one side, you can say everybody's responsible at this point for managing data risks. It's so pervasive. But when everybody's responsible, nobody's responsible. And that's where this is coming down, right? Is the CISO responsible? Is compliance responsible? Who knows? If you're going to say we need one throat to choke, somebody senior executive in the IT organization, some senior executive in compliance function or legal, maybe that's it. In this article that Kevin and I wrote, it was really about this integrated approach. You need these teams really as an integrated function of managing risk. Now, each of them will then have different elements that they're managing within information risk, but fundamentally they need to be integrated as a team. And it doesn't mean they're all in the same org, but it means that there's an integrated team somewhere where all of this starts to come together. Some of it has been, where does governance belong? What does it mean? What is it? It's one of those pejoratives in a way. That's why, again, when we put this higher level messaging around information risk together, we did it because companies understand managing risk. Every company does it. Obviously, regulated companies do it at a whole different level, but every company has some sort of risk management function, and executives understand managing risk. And so that's why we thought if we took this up a level and really did it, put that construct around it, and then started to try and combine these ideas, that would be helpful. Any professional in a function that touches security or risk or compliance has to have basic understandings of all of the other pieces. So if you're in legal, you got to have some basic understanding of cyber. You have to have some basic understanding of the core systems and solutions that are in place where all of your key parts of the business are running. And those systems cannot go down, and they run the business and everything else, but they're also critical to your governance obligations. You have to understand how those things are built, at least at a high level, and what the capabilities are. There's a tremendous amount of innovation. You got to have at least one eye open periodically, looking at something brand new and at least see what might be coming down the pike. If you're not paying a little bit of attention to some of the innovation that's out there, you're probably going to miss it or not develop a roadmap the way you should. Clients that I'm talking to, they foresee a hybrid environment, certainly for the next several months, year, more job openings than there are people. Until you've got the reverse on the supply side, people are going to be able to demand a hybrid environment. A lot of people like that. So I suspect we're going to be working in a hybrid environment for a while.
George Tziahanas, everybody. Nicely done. Thank you so much for being part of this and for joining our discussion. Thanks so much to Breakwater for supporting this series on deconstructing data risk.